I am hardly the first person to notice this, but in his genealogy of Jesus, the Gospel of Matthew, the writer of the Gospel of Matthew, includes the names of 4 women, apart from Mary, the mother of Jesus. And this is a very unusual inclusion, and it has raised many questions over the centuries. Why mention any women at all? This was not normal in ancient genealogies. But we must also ask why these particular women, of course, because they have a few things in common. They all appear to be foreigners. Tamar and Rahab are Canaanites. Ruth is a Moabite, and Bathsheba was married to a Hittite. All 4 of them also seem to have somewhat questionable sexual histories. Tamar and Rahab acted as prostitutes. Ruth seduced Boaz on the threshing floor, and Bathsheba was famously raped by King David. Given all of that, people have reflected down through the years on what Matthew was trying to say by including these specific women. And many of those reflections have brought out deep and important theological meanings in this gospel. But Matthew was not just a theologian. He was also a master storyteller. And so I'm thinking that he didn't just name these women to make theological points. I think he's going out of his way to bring them into his story as characters. See, by opening his gospel with a genealogy, Matthew is summoning the ancestors of Jesus to witness the story that he's about to tell. These are not silent witnesses, therefore, or mere theological signifiers. They are part of the story. And with that in mind, what do these 4 women bring to the story that is being told? Here's something to think about. They are all, of course, mothers. But they are all mothers who became mothers under rather murky circumstances. They had to struggle to have their children. And they had to deal with a great deal of disapproval from others for that struggle. Each one of them also saved the nation in her own way. And yes, that means, I think, that they have a great deal to say, in particular to how Matthew begins the story of his gospel with the story of Joseph, who is struggling to know what to do when he finds out that this woman he has been engaged to is already pregnant. So here's my question for us today. What would these ancestral witnesses, these women, say to Joseph in his sleep as he considers what to do about Mary? Dear, dear Joseph, came the first voice into Joseph's dream. I am your great, maybe 40 times great-grandmother, Tamar. And I know that you are feeling torn over this marriage that your parents have arranged with this woman, Mary, especially as heard the rumors that she's already expecting a child that you had nothing to do with. But I know a few things about her situation. I was in her situation. I was married off to the son of Judah named But then died, and so I was given to Er's brother, Onan. But Onan, he did not want to do the right thing and give me a child who could claim his brother's inheritance. So he died too for his disobedience. So there I was, a widow twice over. And did my father-in-law, Judah, take care of me? No, he didn't. I was in his care, but he didn't take care of me. As far as he was concerned, I was responsible for the death of his 2 sons already. It had all been my fault. He was afraid of me, afraid to give me his last remaining son for fear that he would die too. And so he sent me away, sent me to my father's home, where he left me destitute. For who would marry a woman like me, suspected of causing the death of 2 husbands? It was bad enough for Judah to abandon me, but he also abandoned something else. His responsibility to assure a future for his family. Because he was afraid of me, afraid of doing the right thing by me, he was risking the inheritance of his family. So I had to step in to save not just myself, but to save the entire tribe and ultimately the nation of Judah. And the way I did it, yes, was questionable to say the least. I disguised myself as a prostitute, and I got a child off my own father-in-law. And that's how I ended up in a position like Mary's, accused before the community. I was put into an impossible position, but I acted decisively. And I did not save just myself, but I saved the entire nation that would eventually come to be. I saved the future that you, Joseph, are now living in. In the end, my own father-in-law, Judah, had to admit that I was in the right and he was in the wrong. So, Joseph, you need to look past a situation that, yes, appears bad, that appears shameful, but don't judge the action without taking time to understand the person behind it. And so the spirit of Tamar departed from Joseph's sleep, but soon another ancestor came to speak to him. Now Rahab had never been a woman who hesitated to share her feelings, and she did not hold back with Joseph now. I hear you're worried about shame, oh my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson, she began. Well, let me tell you something about shame. My family and I, we were rejected by the people of Jericho, our city. We were left to live in the worst place imaginable, a house built into the great walls of the city. We had lost all social supports, and so I had no choice. If I was going to be able to support my family, I would have to enter into the oldest profession. And that meant I only became even more rejected, more maligned. But I never gave up. And I dreamed of a better life for my children. I set up a rope-making operation so that they could have a respectable future. But the shame that was heaped upon me, it affected all of us. That's why I know the power of shame. And it's not a good power. Far from keeping me in line, it made me rebellious. And when the opportunity came along to betray my city, I didn't hesitate. Joseph, shame is so damaging. It destroys relationships, tears down whole cities, never makes anything better. So think twice, Joseph, before you join in the chorus and pile shame upon the head of poor Mary and her child. After Rahab had departed, her granddaughter-in-law, Ruth, although I think it's possible that Matthew was skipping a few generations and she was a more distant descendant, but Ruth came along. Joseph, she began without hesitation, I am Ruth, and as your ancestor, and the great-grandmother of King David. There's a few things I think you need to know about Mary and her situation. She's all alone now. Because of the scandal around her and this questionable pregnancy, she doesn't have anyone she can turn to. And I know what that's like. When Naomi and I came back from Moab, both of us with our husbands dead and no children, we only had each other. And that woman, she meant the world to me. I loved her as I loved my own life. But the rules of our society meant that women were not allowed to support one another. Joseph, I know you are thinking that you should just send Mary away quietly and that would be the decent thing to do because it would at least not subject her to public scorn. However, Joseph, you need to understand the world of isolation you would be sending Mary into. No, Naomi and I, we were at our worst. We were teetering on the edge of starvation. I had to go gleaning in the fields at harvest time, a situation that meant that women like me were often attacked. We almost didn't make it, but someone helped us. And yeah, I kind of did have to go and find Boaz, and he took a bit of persuading, but he became our Redeemer. And with his help, Naomi and I and he and our son became a family together. But it almost didn't happen. And if no one had helped us, it wouldn't have happened. And if it hadn't happened, there would have been no King David, no nation of Judah, and there would have been no you lying there trying to figure out what to do about Mary. Just think about that, Joseph. One more visitor came to disturb Joseph's sleep and to prepare his mind for the angelic announcement that was on its way. Her name was Bathsheba. She was an ancestor of Joseph that everyone had underestimated. Why, even the gospel writer thought little enough of her that he didn't name her as such, only referred to her by her husband's name, Uriah. But Bathsheba had thoughts about what Joseph was doing, and she didn't hesitate to share them. Everyone thought that I was just a helpless woman, she declared, but I am a survivor. When David spied on me while I was bathing in my husband's home, when he used his high position to invade my private space, I was helpless. When he summoned me, I had no choice but to go. When he directed me to his bedchamber, I could not resist. But I survived. I survived the devastation of that night. And then, when I fell pregnant, David did not care for me. He cared only for himself and for his position. In his efforts to escape his accountability, he carried out actions, did terrible things. His destructive impulses not only fell upon Uriah, who had only acted with honor, but also sowed a spirit of destruction that would continue to warp David's kingdom and family and children for the rest of his life. The death of our firstborn son after his birth only made David think about himself. It was all about himself. It was about his grief, his loss. It was as if he didn't even realize that I also had lost a child. But through it all, I survived. I navigated all of the intrigues of a family that was far more dysfunctional than you can imagine. And somehow, I managed to teach my second son, Solomon, to be wise enough to rise above it all. And then when David was so old and so addled that it seemed inevitable, that his kingdom was going to explode in anarchy and chaos, I was ready to act again. This time, it wasn't just about my own survival, though. It was about the survival of the kingdom of Israel itself. Oh, I could see it so clearly. As soon as everyone realized that David was no longer the man he had once been, a civil war would erupt and would destroy everything that David had built. And so I had to move quickly. With the help of Nathan, I persuaded David to fulfill an old promise. He let go of his power and placed my Solomon on his throne. I did that, me. Not too bad for someone whom everyone had written off as a helpless woman that they could use however they wished. Never estimate the power of the survivor. And I've seen this Mary of yours, Joseph. She is a survivor. And so Joseph slept on. Each of his ancestors had brought him a bit of wisdom, something for him to consider. And I'm sure that's why when the final visitor, an angel from the heavenly court, arrived to bring him a message, he was prepared to receive it. And he soon realized that he had indeed underestimated the strength and the courage that was in this woman, Mary. Turned out, she was full of surprises. The Gospel of Matthew says that it was the visit of an angel to Joseph in a dream that persuaded him that he should not put Mary aside. But I cannot help but think that Matthew is also suggesting that Joseph could have found the strength and the wisdom he needed to create that new possibility by meditating on his extraordinary female ancestors as well. Certainly they, along with Mary, ought to teach us all never to discount anyone, least of all a woman, because her circumstances put her in a place that looks a little bit bad or scandalous. Thanks be to God for these extraordinary witnesses to the birth of Emmanuel. Amen.